2,000 videos, 180,000 images, all of it linked to one man, Jeffrey Epstein. When the Epstein files dropped, the government thought they had hidden the most dangerous names. They were wrong. The digital documents had a flaw. Every blacked-out section, every name they tried to erase, could be read by simply copying and pasting it into a text file. Within hours, researchers across the internet had uncovered what officials spent years trying to bury. The American public had been waiting years for this moment. Congress had passed a law by a vote of 427 to 1, demanding the government release everything it had, what they got, raised more questions than it answered. This is what the Epstein files actually contain, and what they're still hiding. Before we get into what the documents contain, you need to understand how we got here. In November 2025, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The vote was 427 to 1, one single. Congressmen voted against releasing the files. The Senate then approved it unanimously the same day. President Trump signed it into law the following morning. The law was simple. The Department of Justice had 30 days to release every document, email, video, and image they held relating to Jeffrey Epstein. No hiding behind political embarrassment. No delays, everything. They missed the deadline. On December 19, 2025, the legal deadline, the DOJ released a first batch of documents, but it wasn't everything. Hundreds of pages were completely blacked out. Some documents were so heavily redacted they were effectively unreadable. Then something strange happened. At least 16 files quietly disappeared from the DOJ website, including a photograph of President Trump. They were later restored after journalists noticed. So what did the files actually show? One of the most significant revelations was how early the FBI knew about Epstein's crimes. According to documents in the release, the FBI was first tipped off in September 1996. An Epstein survivor named Maria Farmer personally contacted the FBI that year to report that Epstein was involved in child sex abuse. Investigators failed to take action. The FBI opened a formal investigation into Epstein in July 2006. By 2007, agents were preparing for an indictment, not just of Epstein, but of 3 of his personal associates as well. A draft federal indictment had been written. That indictment never happened. Instead, in 2008, Epstein was given what legal experts called a sweetheart deal. He pleaded guilty to 2 state charges, served 13 months, and was allowed to leave jail 6 days a week to go to his office. The lead prosecutor who made that deal was Alexander Acosta, who later became Trump's Secretary of Labor. The documents also revealed that Epstein traveled using a fake passport, an Austrian passport with his real photograph, but under a different name. It contained entry stamps from France, Spain, Saudi Arabia, and the United Kingdom. And then there was the redaction failure. When researchers began reviewing the digital files, they discovered a critical error. Documents that appeared to be blacked out, with names and details hidden under solid bars, could actually be revealed. By simply copying and pasting the blacked-out text into a word processor, the hidden content appeared. Names that officials had deliberately tried to conceal became visible. The flaw traced back to a 2021 court filing, which the DOJ had incorporated directly into its release without correcting. The Epstein files contain the names of hundreds of prominent people, politicians, business people, celebrities, royalty. Before we go through who appears, one thing must be absolutely clear. Appearing in these documents does not mean someone committed a crime. Being mentioned in an FBI file, appearing in a photograph, or having sent an email to Epstein does not make someone guilty of anything. The files document contacts and associations. Nothing more, unless explicitly stated. With that said, here is who appears. Former President Bill Clinton appears extensively throughout the files, in photographs, on flight logs, and in correspondence. Clinton has acknowledged knowing Epstein, but has denied any knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Lawrence Summers, the former U.S. Treasury Secretary, appears in emails. In documents released in late 2025, Summers was shown asking Epstein for personal advice. The revelations led Summers to step down from Harvard University and resign from the board of OpenAI. Peter Mandelson, the former British ambassador to the United States and a senior figure in the Labour Party, appears multiple times. Documents suggest he referred to Epstein as his best friend and indicate he may have passed sensitive government information to Epstein. In February 2026, Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party and the House of Lords. He was subsequently arrested. Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, has been among the most prominent figures connected to Epstein for years. Documents and testimony from survivors place Andrew at Epstein's properties. In 2022, Andrew settled a civil lawsuit brought by an accuser. He has denied wrongdoing. Following the 2026 document releases, Andrew was stripped of his remaining titles and arrested. Dozens of other names appear throughout the documents, including business executives, scientists, and political figures from multiple countries. Here's what may be the most important part of this story, what we still don't know. Of the millions of documents in government possession, at least 500 pages in the December 2025 release were completely blacked out. A 119-page document labeled simply Grand Jury, New York, is entirely redacted. Every single page. 3 consecutive documents totaling 255 pages, all completely blacked out. The DOJ has stated that its January 2026 release would be the final major one, that it has met its legal obligations. But the bipartisan authors of the Epstein Transparency Act, Congressman Ro Khanna and Congressman Thomas Massie, formally requested to review the unredacted files themselves to verify this claim. And there is a significant problem with the DOJ's position. Multiple reports indicate the full Epstein files may contain over 6 million pages. The DOJ released approximately 3.5 million. That leaves potentially 2.5 million pages unaccounted for. A January 2026 CNN poll found that only 6% of Americans said they were satisfied with what the government had released. Nearly half of all Republicans, 3/4 of independents, and 9 in 10 Democrats said they believe the government was deliberately withholding information. The law specifically states that documents cannot be withheld simply because they would cause embarrassment to a government official or public figure. Yet the redactions continue. This story is no longer just American. In the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer fired Peter Mandelson from his position as ambassador to the United States in September 2025, before the full document release, following mounting scrutiny of his ties to Epstein. In France, Jack Lang, the country's former Minister of Culture and the head of the Arab World Institute in Paris, resigned from his position in February 2026 after a video emerged in the DOJ files showing him with Epstein outside the Louvre. Countries including Turkey and Lithuania have opened their own investigations in connection with names that appear in the documents. In Russia, in what many have called a notable irony, the Kremlin publicly pointed to revelations in the Epstein files as supposed evidence of moral corruption in the Western elite. The files have also created consequences in the world of business and academia. Harvard University announced that Lawrence Summers would resign from all academic and faculty roles by the end of the school year. Casey Wasserman, the chair of the organizing committee for the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, announced he would sell his stake in his company after his name appeared in the files. For decades, the Epstein network operated quietly, protected by influence and silence. The documents are now beginning to dismantle that protection, though many argue the process is far too slow and far too incomplete. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in July 2019. He died in a Manhattan jail cell 6 weeks later, in circumstances that remain disputed to this day. His longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted in 2021 and is currently serving a 20-year sentence. She is the only person beyond Epstein himself to face serious criminal consequences for what the files describe as a decades-long network of abuse. The documents released so far have ended careers, triggered arrests, and reopened investigations across multiple continents. But survivors' advocates say justice remains incomplete. Virginia Jeffrey, one of Epstein's most vocal survivors, died by suicide in 2025. Her family has publicly stated they are outraged by the government's handling of the document release, pointing out that the DOJ redacted the names of perpetrators while accidentally unredacting the names of victims. The question that remains is not just who was involved. It's why it took over 20 years. Why a draft federal indictment was abandoned. Why the first complaints to the FBI in 1996 went nowhere. Who made those decisions, and why? Those answers may still be in the files we haven't seen. In the next video, we're going deeper, inside Epstein's network of properties, the flight logs, and the structure of how this operation actually worked. If you want to follow this story, subscribe now. Every video in this series builds on the last. And if you found this useful, leave a comment. Tell me what you want covered next.